Hey everybody, today we're going to do a deep dive into the U.S. Senate election in Texas. Republicans confident they're going to win this seat, but if Democrats were able to flip it, that would make it much more likely they're going to hold on to control of the Senate. So let's start here on Ballotpedia with some background information. The incumbent senator here is Republican Ted Cruz. He's running for re-election to a third term. Prior to his time in the Senate, he worked as an attorney and also the Solicitor General of Texas. During his last win in 2018, he won re-election by a more narrow 2.5 points. His opponent on the Democratic side is Colin Allred, and he's currently in the U.S. House from the Dallas area serving his third term. Prior to that, he also has experience as a lawyer and even spent some time in the NFL. And now, in addition to these two on the ballot, there's also going to be a Libertarian candidate, Ted Brown. But let's see how these two did in their primaries. Allred was able to avoid a runoff. He won with a majority of about 59% support. And Ted Cruz, the incumbent, he only had token opposition. He cleared 88% in his primary. And if you'd like to compare raw primary vote totals, Democrats were over 967,000, while Republicans were over 2.2 million. Personally, I don't put much weight on those kinds of numbers, but if you do, Ted Cruz has a clear, massive advantage. Now let's go down here and see how this race is rated. As of the last update on October 1st, it's rated as likely Republican from Cook and Larry Sabato. It's lean Republican from Decision Desk and Inside Elections. So we've got kind of a split here, and it's trended more toward a competitive status. My own most recent rating was just into likely Republican, but it's borderline. I could easily see putting this at leans. Also, down here you can take a look at the campaign finance. This is last updated as of the end of June, but both Allred and Cruz have a ton of money raised. Cruz is the incumbent, he has the bigger war chest, but Allred is not too far behind. So let's see how some of these counties have trended on a presidential level. We're not going to have time to look at everything, but let's look at where Colin Allred is from and take a look at Dallas County. Over the past 3 presidential elections, you can clearly see that it's gotten bluer. Last time, Biden doing about 8 points better than Obama did in 2012. Next door in Tarrant County, this one voted Republican up until Biden flipped it in 2020. They carried it by about 2/10. The suburbs have been more of a concern here for Republicans over the past few elections, but at the same time, a lot of the more urban blue counties have gotten even bluer. Let's go to where the capital of Austin is in Travis County. This is another one that was already pretty blue back in 12, but at the last election, Trump did about 10 points worse than Romney, while Biden did about 11.5 points better than Obama. Now, the key suburban counties are going to be north of there in Williamson. This is a county that voted 20 points for Mitt Romney back in 12. It got a lot narrower in 16, but then in 20 it flipped and it actually voted for Biden by more than 1 point. So that's where there's been a lot of population growth. Republicans cannot afford to keep losing support there. South of there in Hayes County, it has less people, but it supported Romney comfortably at 12. But last time it was the opposite. It supported Biden by more than 10 points. Now, there's a ton of other counties on here. We're not going to have time to look at them, but a bright spot for the Republicans has been in South Texas in the Rio Grande Valley. Many of these counties have been deep blue for a very, very long time, but Trump was able to put a significant dent in it in 2020. Some of these counties with a higher population are going to be all the way down at the bottom near Brownsville. Cameron County supported Obama over Romney by 31 points, but in 2020 it supported Biden by just 13. That's a lot of movement. Next door in Hidalgo County, this voted for Obama by more than 40 points, but last time it supported Biden by only 17. Again, a ton of movement in a short time there. So even if Ted Cruz makes some gains here in South Texas, if the trends in the suburbs continue, he could actually end up losing more support overall. But the last thing to point out here are going to be these deep red counties. A lot of these have very low populations, and many of them were already extremely red in the days of Mitt Romney. But once Trump got into the picture, but then you could see the Republican support here went from around the 70s, sometimes into the 80s, even close to 90. There are a lot of those counties. Once you even everything out, the Republicans statewide have had more success, but the gap has been narrowing over the past couple of decades. Democrats had hoped that Hispanic support, especially in South Texas, would have caused the state to flip by this point. Given the partisan leanings with those demographics, it's unclear if the Democrats are going to be able to win a race here statewide. They have not done so since 1994. Now let's look at Ted Cruz's win in the last election. Now keep in mind, this was a blue wave, but Cruz got almost 51%. O'Rourke was over 48. In Tarrant County, Cruz lost this by over 4,000 votes. In Dallas, he only pulled in about a third of the vote. Williamson County was also blue in this by almost 3 points. That county looks like it could be a key bellwether. If you go out to El Paso, Cruz only pulls in a quarter of the vote here. About Harris County, Cruz gets it just over 41%. And in South Texas, Cruz underperforming Donald Trump here. He got it above 40% in both Cameron and Hidalgo, but Cruz is under 37 in Cameron and just barely over 30% in Hidalgo. So even with those narrower margins, overall, Cruz was still able to hold held on. Now in the following election in 2020, which also had presidential turnout, their other U.S. Senator, John Cornyn, won by about 9.5 points. Cornyn is considered less polarizing and he's more establishment. Even with higher turnout, he was able to almost hit double digits. And on this map, Cornyn won Tarrant County by 5 points. He also won Williamson by 3. And in South Texas, he was getting margins similar to Trump, where he was in the low 40s. So that was not a blue wave. But Cornyn is more popular. It's going to be a little bit more of an uphill climb for Cruz. Now let's take a glance at their official campaign websites. Here it is for Ted Cruz. If you want to hear more about him, see what he's up to on the campaign trail or support his candidacy. And here it is for Colin Allred. If you want to see where he stands on some of the issues, buy some of his merch or support his campaign. So what about any debates? Well, we've got one coming up here on October 15th. Cruz and Allred are going to take the stage, which is nice to see. It'd be nice to get more than one, but considering some races are having no debates, I think we can live with just the one. Now let's get on Wikipedia and take a look at the current polling. Right now, with the average of all the aggregates, Cruz is up by about 3.5. No polls have dropped so far in early October, but it looks like Cruz is generally ahead by about 3 or 4 points. There was one poll here from Morning Consult a few weeks ago that did show Allred with a 1-point lead at 45-44, and that one also did have a pretty big sample size. So the race could be tightening here, which is not totally unexpected. We're getting closer to Election Day. Voters are paying more attention. The undecideds are breaking one way or the other as these two are trying to get their turnout up. Now let's compare these polls to how accurate they were in 2018. And here it looked like Ted Cruz had a little bit more of an advantage than he ended up winning by. Some of these were close, but it looked like O'Rourke boosted his support by a couple of more points than expected. A better way to look at that might be here on Real Clear Politics. The average of these final 4 polls had Cruz up 6.8, but he only won by 2.6. So that is a clear overestimation of support for Cruz. So the last thing we're going to do is get on Polymarket and see where people are putting their money. Right now, Ted Cruz is favored to win with 83%. Colin Allred, the Democrat, is at 17. So that's a decisive advantage for Cruz, but it's not completely overwhelming. If another poll or two drops, that shows this thing within the margin of error. I'm guessing this market is going to tighten even further, getting down into the 70s for Cruz. So what is the conclusion here for this Senate race in Texas? Well, Ted Cruz definitely has some likability issues. Over the years, he's had kind of a rocky relationship with Trump. Sometimes he stood up to him, other times he's cozied up to him. At this point, he's clearly on the cozy side. But he eked out a win in 2018, although that was a blue wave type of environment. He's running a Keep Texas, Texas type of campaign. I don't think that's a bad move at all. And on the other side, Colin Allred, he does not at all have the right kind of a last name if he's looking to flip this state blue. But he's got some suburban appeal. He's trying to run a more pragmatic type of campaign. He's young. He's hoping he can paint Ted Cruz as unlikable and out of touch on a couple of the key issues, most notably abortion. I'd say he has an outside chance of having success here. A lot of it's going to come down to the suburban trends. But can Ted Cruz make some more gains with Hispanic voters and get them at least up to the level that Trump is expected to get? If that happens, and if Cruz has any kind of success on the issue of immigration, then Cruz should at least be able to win this seat, even if it's by a very narrow margin. He could still win it by 6 or 7, that's all possible. But given the overall trends of the state over the past couple of decades, there's no guarantee Ted Cruz can win. Although at the top of the ticket, he's going to have Trump boosting his turnout and enthusiasm. And the polling has underestimated Trump here in the past. So maybe that's a good sign for Cruz. Maybe something else comes up, possibly at the debate, and Cruz falls flat, Allred surges. Anything is possible, but we're going to see what happens. So let me know in the comments, what do you think about this Texas Senate race? Do you think Ted Cruz is going to win by more than the margin he won in the blue wave of 18? Or do you think the leftward trends are going to continue and it's going to be even narrower for Cruz? Or do you think possibly Allred could actually flip and win this seat? Let me know down below on your way out. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe and join if you'd like to support the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.